Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the Missing Dots, the space where uncomfortable questions are not avoided but confronted head-on. Here, we peel back the layers of belief, doubt, history, and hidden metaphysics to expose the truths most people are too afraid to touch. Every episode challenges the narratives you inherited, forces you to rethink the assumptions you never questioned, and invites you into a world where logic, spirituality, and raw honesty collide. If you're ready to step beyond the surface and connect the dots everyone else ignores, you're exactly where you need to be.
It's remarkably peaceful out here today, actually.
It really is, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Sitting out here in the mosque courtyard after prayer, just listening to the birds and feeling the breeze, it gives you a minute to actually breathe.
It's much needed.
Right. And if you're listening to us right now, wherever you are, maybe you're driving or maybe you're at work, just imagine you're sitting right here on the stone steps with us.
Just pull up a spot.
Exactly, because the quiet out here, it contrasts really sharply with this absolute mountain of material I brought for us to look through today.
I was going to say, I see that. You've got quite the stack of notes there.
Oh, yeah.
What exactly are we looking at?
Well, we've got a massive stack of sources in front of us. I've been pulling from everywhere, honestly. We
Yeah.
have classical theology stuff from Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Ghazali, but I've also brought, modern clinical pathology journals.
Oh, God.
Yeah, detailing specific genetic mutations. And I even have ecological reports from the Yellowstone National Park Restoration Project.
That is a very wide range of material.
It is, but our mission today is to cross-reference all of this seemingly disconnected data. We're dissecting probably the heaviest question a human being can ask.
The problem of evil.
The problem of evil?
Yeah, that is a massive undertaking for a quiet afternoon.
I know.
But it is the ultimate stumbling block for so many people, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you look at the world and it's just saturated with pain.
Right.
We see childhood diseases that strike out of nowhere. We see natural disasters just wiping out entire communities.
Yeah, the suffering is undeniable.
Right. And you look at nature and it's this brutal, relentless cycle of predators and prey.
It can be overwhelming.
So the loudest question from skeptics, from atheists, and honestly from believers who are just struggling in the dark is, how do you reconcile a God who is entirely merciful with a world that operates like this?
It's a very natural human question. It really is.
Yeah.
But as we start looking through these sources, the first thing we have to recognize is a hidden premise.
What do you mean?
Well, the modern secular version of this argument, the one you hear in all the prominent public debates today, it quietly smuggles in a massive assumption,
Okay.
and almost nobody catches it.
You're talking about the anthropocentric fallacy?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. The secular argument looks at the universe and says, well, there is physical suffering here.
Right.
Therefore, the designer is either cruel, incompetent, or simply doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's the standard line.
But that logic rests on a very specific premise. It assumes that a good universe is one designed exclusively to maximize human and animal physical comfort.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was reading one philosopher who described it perfectly.
What did he say?
He said modern atheism judges the creator by the standards of a late capitalist consumer safety manual.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Right. It assumes the highest possible good in existence is just the absence of friction, the absence of physical discomfort.
Like the universe is supposed to be a luxury resort.
Exactly. A luxury resort, and God is basically the concierge.
And if the air conditioning breaks,
If the AC breaks, the concierge has failed. That's how they view it.
it is a very accurate way to describe their worldview, honestly. It elevates hedonic comfort, just feeling good physically, to the ultimate purpose of existence.
But if you take that assumption away...
The entire architectural critique of the universe starts to collapse.
Right, because if the universe isn't a luxury hotel, we have to ask what it actually is.
Yeah.
And looking at the classical Islamic metaphysics here, it tells us this world is not a broken paradise.
No, it was never intended to be paradise.
It's Dar al-Ibtila.
The abode of trial.
Yes, the abode of trial. It is a highly volatile, structurally dynamic proving ground.
The Quran states explicitly that life and death were created to test which of us is best indeed,
Right. It's a crucible for soul rectification.
which the classical scholars call al-asla.
Right. So if you evaluate the universe based on its actual stated purpose, which is testing and spiritual elevation rather than this assumed purpose of maximizing physical comfort.
The design makes complete sense.
It really does. I was actually thinking about an analogy for this earlier today.
Let's hear it.
Imagine someone walking into a gymnasium for the very first time, but they have absolutely no idea what a gym is.
Okay.
They think it's supposed to be a spa.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
So they walk in, they look around, and they're just horrified.
Because there's no massage tables.
Exactly. They say, this place is terribly designed. Everything is ridiculously heavy. The metal bars hurt my hands.
The treadmills make my lungs burn.
And everyone here is sweating and exhausted. And they think, if the architect who built this place liked us, they would have put in recliners and televisions.
And from their limited paradigm, they are completely right.
Right. If you think the gym is a spa, then the heavyweights are a massive design flaw.
They are what philosophers might call gratuitous evil.
But the moment someone taps you on the shoulder and says, friend, this is a gym, your entire perspective shifts.
You realize the resistance isn't a flaw.
The resistance is the entire point. You cannot build muscle without tearing the fibers first.
And that brings us perfectly to the notes you have there from Ibn Taymiyyah.
Oh, yeah, his dynamic theodicy.
Exactly. It operates exactly on this principle. He argues that God does not will hardship for the sake of hardship.
Right. He doesn't just create pain because he's sadistic or enjoys suffering.
No. He wills the friction for the transcendent goods that it produces.
We should probably define what those transcendent goods actually look like.
Good idea.
Because we aren't just talking about building physical muscle here, right? We're talking about the spiritual architecture of a human being.
Think about the highest human virtues: courage, patience, empathy,
Yeah.
profound reliance on God, which we call tawakkul, forgiveness, generosity.
And none of those traits can physically or conceptually exist in a frictionless bubble.
You literally cannot be courageous if there is absolutely no danger to face.
You can't. If we were placed into a world of instant gratification and zero danger,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be virtuous,
We would be ontologically stagnant.
meaning our souls would just atrophy, like a muscle in zero gravity.
Yes, exactly. You'd just be a passive consumer of pleasure.
Wow.
Ibn Taymiyyah explains that worldly corruption or hardship is always localized.
Localized.
A relative hardship that serves as a mandatory catalyst for an absolute overarching good.
Okay, I see.
The metal weights in your gym analogy, they are heavy and they cause micro tears in the muscle. Yes.
Right, which is a localized harm.
But the strength you build,
Hmm.
the resilience you gain, that is the overarching goal.
I follow that completely on a spiritual, philosophical level. I really do. But I want to push back here.
Go ahead.
Because this is where my mind goes when I look at the medical journals I brought.
Okay, let's look at them.
Even if the soul requires resistance, why does the physical sensation of pain have to be so agonizing?
That's a fair question.
Couldn't God have designed a biological system where we learn these grand spiritual lessons without our nerve endings just screaming on fire?
It's a very fair question. But to answer it, we have to look closely at the biological architecture of pain.
Which is where these medical papers come in.
Right. The secular argument often claims that physical pain is just a cosmic glitch or some arbitrary torture device built into the system.
Yeah.
But the clinical pathology you have in front of you tells a completely different story, doesn't it?
It really does. I was reading through these specific medical papers on the NTRK1 gene, and this is what blew my mind. There is a rare genetic mutation that prevents the development of certain nerve receptors during the embryonic stage.
And it causes a condition called SEPA,
Yes, congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis.
which means the person feels absolutely zero physical pain.
Zero. Nothing at all. At first glance, a world without pain sounds like the atheist utopia, right?
That sounds like a superpower.
You never feel a stubbed toe, you never feel a burn.
But the medical reality of those patients is terrifying, isn't it?
It is absolutely horrific because there is no alarm bell going off.
Yeah.
Children with SIPO will literally chew off their own tongues while teething.
Just out of mechanical habit.
Yes, because they don't feel the damage.
It's awful.
They will walk on a fractured leg until the bone grinds the joint into absolute dust.
The doctors call it a Charcot joint.
Right. They will lean on a hot stove and just stand there while their flesh burns simply because their brain isn't receiving the signal to pull away.
It forces us to reframe pain entirely, doesn't it?
It really does.
Pain is handled by a mandatory survival system called nociception.
Right.
It's a highly sophisticated network of sensors that detect mechanical, thermal, or chemical threats.
So pain is not a punishment.
No, it is encrypted survival data.
Wow. Encrypted survival data. And without it, the body undergoes a rapid, catastrophic self-destruction.
That's the reality of it.
Like, most patients with SIPA die very young from completely unnoticed internal infections or injuries.
They get appendicitis.
Yeah. And because their stomach doesn't hurt, it bursts and they die of sepsis.
It's tragic.
So when someone casually demands a biological world without pain, they aren't demanding a paradise.
Yeah.
They are demanding a rapid death sentence for every living organism.
Yes, and it shows the limitation of human imagination. We think we can design a better universe, but we don't understand the load-bearing walls of the one we currently live in.
Pull out the pillar of pain and the whole biological house collapses.
Exactly.
Okay, acute pain makes total sense. You touch the hot stove, the nociceptors fire, you feel agony, you pull your hand away.
The alarm worked.
The alarm worked, you survive. But what about chronic pain? If you're listening to this and thinking, well, God could just tweak the laws of biology to stop the alarm once we get the message, how does that fit?
It's a harder question.
Think about a terminal cancer patient or an old wolf in the wild with severe arthritis.
Right.
The damage is done, there's no pulling the hand away, but the pain just keeps going. The alarm is broken and the volume is just stuck at 10.
Yeah.
That feels like a legitimate biological flaw, doesn't it?
That is a profound observation.
Yeah.
And it touches on the limitation of material creation itself.
How so?
Chronic pain, from a neurological perspective, often involves a process called central sensitization.
Central sensitization.
Yes. The nervous system basically becomes hyperreactive.
Oh, why does it do that? Like, how does the mechanism actually fail?
It fails because of neuroplasticity.
Wait, neuroplasticity.
Yes. The fundamental rule of the nervous system is neurons that fire together wire together. This is the exact same mechanism that allows your brain to form memories,
Oh, wow.
to learn a new language, to adapt to new environments. When pain signals fire repeatedly, the neural pathways strengthen, making the system more efficient at feeling pain.
So the mechanism that allows us to learn and adapt is the exact same mechanism that risks getting stuck in a chronic pain loop.
Yes. In a physical, finite universe governed by biology and physics, you cannot separate the two.
They come as a package deal.
Exactly. It confirms that we live in a contingent material world, not an eternal, perfect one.
Right.
God could have made us out of materials that never degrade, never learn, and never misfire.
But then we wouldn't be biological humans.
We would be statues.
Wow.
The risk of chronic pain is the shadow cast by the brilliant light of consciousness and neuroplasticity.
The shadow cast by the light. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
It helps us understand the trade-offs of a physical existence.
It really does, because it leads right into the next philosophical hurdle. If we accept that pain is necessary for biology to function, and friction is necessary for the soul to grow, where does the actual flaw come from?
The ontology of evil.
Right. I look at a tumor cell dividing out of control. Did God actively sit down and invent the cancer cell?
Right.
Did he create decay and entropy as physical objects, the way a carpenter creates a chair?
This is where we really need to dive into how classical Islamic philosophers approach this.
Figures like Al-Ghazali, right?
Al-Ghazali, Ibn Sina, Mullah Sadra. They understood the ontology of evil in a very specific way.
Okay.
They utilized a concept called Adam,
Adam.
which translates to non-being or privation. The Latin philosophical tradition calls it privatio boni, the privation of good.
Non-being. I struggle with that a bit.
How so?
Well, a tumor definitely exists. It has mass. An earthquake exists. They don't feel like non-being.
I see what you mean. They exist as experiences or events, yes,
Right.
but not as independent ontological substances. Let me explain using the physics of our universe.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about darkness. What is the physical substance of darkness?
Well, there is no substance. It's just what happens when there are no photons.
Exactly. When there is no light. Darkness is not a thing.
Right.
You cannot manufacture darkness in a factory. You cannot fill a jar with a substance called darkness and pour it onto a table.
Because darkness is simply the absence of photons.
Exactly. What about cold?
Same exact principle. Cold is just the absence of thermal kinetic energy.
Yes. You don't create cold, you just remove heat.
Okay, I'm following.
Sickness is the privation of health. Ignorance is the privation of knowledge.
So evil.
Evil, in this metaphysical framework, is not a positive force or dark entity that God created as a rival to goodness.
Right.
God creates existence, and existence itself is good. Evil is the lack, the deficiency, the absence of that perfection.
Okay, I think I'm following the mechanics of this. I actually have a note here about thermodynamics that fits perfectly with what you're saying.
Let's hear it.
The second law of thermodynamics dictates entropy. things decay, heat dissipates, systems move from order to disorder.
Right.
And without entropy, you literally have no forward arrow of time. You have no chemical reactions, you have no metabolism.
Exactly. A physical universe without entropy is a frozen, static, dead universe.
Whoa.
To have dynamic life, to have a heart that beats, lungs that breathe, a planet that orbits a sun, you need the gradients of decay and energy transfer.
So, demanding a world entirely without evil, without any flaws, decay, or entropy,
It's logically incoherent.
it's literally like demanding a shadow without an object to block the light.
Yes.
People are basically asking God not to create finite beings at all. They are saying, if you can't make me infinite and perfect like you, don't make me at all.
That is the ultimate logical conclusion of the secular argument against God.
Right.
To remove all conditions for this atom, this privation,
Yeah.
means God can only create absolute perfection.
And absolute perfection is God himself.
Precisely. So demanding no privation means demanding that God never create the material universe at all.
But then that raises the ultimate question, doesn't it?
Which one?
If God didn't have to create this finite, shadowed, entropic universe, why do it?
Wow.
If the physical world requires decay and pain to function, why not just skip it? Why create a universe where these shadows and privations exist at all?
That is the core of the mystery. And Ibn al-Qayyim provides one of the most intellectually and spiritually satisfying answers to this.
Okay, what does he say?
He looks at existence through the lens of Asma wa Sifat.
The divine names and attributes.
Yes, the divine names and attributes of God. Ibn al-Qayyim argues that the universe is a canvas for the manifestation of those divine attributes.
Okay.
Think about it logically. If God never created a world with the capacity for sickness, injury, or biological breakdown,
Right.
how would the attribute of Al-Shafi, the healer, ever manifest?
It would remain hidden.
It would remain completely hidden.
Or if he never created a world with free will, where human beings can make terrible choices, fall into moral ruin, and commit sins, how would Al-Ghafur, the forgiver, or Al-Tawwab, the acceptor of repentance, ever be known to anyone?
Exactly. How could God manifest as Al-Jabbar, the restorer, if there's absolutely nothing broken to restore?
If you take away the dark, you never see the stars.
It's that simple.
If we lived in a completely painless, frictionless, perfect world, we would never actually experience divine mercy in action.
No, what would it?
It would just be a theoretical concept, like a
Yeah.
word written on a page.
Right.
But when you are truly broken, when you are brought to your absolute knees by this world and you feel that restoration, that's when you know the restorer.
That is it. That is exactly it.
It's beautiful.
The classical scholars point out that human depth, profound love, and genuine relational connection with the divine are forged almost exclusively in those moments of vulnerability.
Yeah.
A human being who has never faced a hardship, who has never been desperate enough to cry out for help, is spiritually shallow.
The friction produces the light.
The friction produces the light.
Yes. I hear that. I really do. The philosophy is beautiful. The physics make sense.
Yeah.
But I have to bring us down from the cosmos for a minute.
Okay.
Because this is where the conversation usually breaks down for people.
I think I know where you're going.
It's one thing to talk about adults learning patience or the universe acting as a canvas for the divine names.
They're thinking about the innocent.
I am. I really am. How do you look at an infant in a pediatric intensive care unit?
It's heavy.
A baby born with a terminal genetic disease, struggling to breathe. They don't have sins to forgive.
No, they don't.
They don't have the cognitive development to consciously learn patience or conceptualize the divine names.
Right.
What is the point of their agony?
It is the most emotionally agonizing aspect of this entire topic.
It really is.
And the Islamic tradition does not shy away from it. It meets it head on.
Wow.
First, we have to establish a foundational theological rule. Infants have absolutely no taklif.
Taklif meaning moral accountability. The pen is lifted from them.
Yes, they cannot sin. Therefore, their suffering is absolutely, categorically not a punishment.
Okay, that's crucial.
Anyone who tells a grieving mother that her child's illness is a punishment from God is speaking against classical Islamic theology.
Okay, I agree with that completely. But
Okay.
if it's not a punishment and the infant can't learn a spiritual lesson from it, then it just looks completely pointless to us standing by the hospital bed.
I understand that.
It looks like random cruelty.
It looks pointless to us. And that is where the Quran addresses this specific human blindness directly.
Where does it do that?
It happens in Surah Al-Kahf with the story of Prophet Musa and Al-Khidr.
Ah, the journey where Musa follows the wise man Khidr to learn about the unseen realities.
Yes. And what happens on that journey?
Khidr does some pretty intense things.
He commits actions that, to Musa, who represents human reason, justice, and observable data, look like gratuitous, horrific evils.
Right, he damages a boat belonging to poor fishermen.
And most shockingly, he takes the life of an innocent boy.
And Musa is outraged.
Anyone would be outraged.
From the outside, looking at the observable data, it looks like pure madness and cruelty.
But Khidr later reveals the hidden, overarching reality. He pulls back the curtain.
Right, he explains the reasons.
The boat was going to be seized by a brutal tyrant. Damaging it slightly made it undesirable, saving the poor fisherman's livelihood.
Okay.
And the boy was going to grow up to be a tyrant who would violently oppress his believing parents and destroy their faith.
So his early death protected the parent's eternity, and the child himself is translated to a higher state of mercy.
Exactly.
I get the theology of the Khidr story. I do.
But you still have reservations.
I'll be honest, to a parent standing in the ICU, telling them you have an epistemic limitation feels incredibly cold.
It is cold.
How does classical metaphysics bridge the gap between this high-level cosmic math and the raw human devastation a mother feels holding a dying child?
I agree completely. Telling a grieving parent they have an epistemic limitation is not the prophetic way.
Right.
The Prophet Muhammad wept when his own infant son, Ibrahim, passed away.
He wept.
He didn't offer a philosophical lecture in that moment. He wept and said, "The eyes shed tears and the heart is grieved, but we will not say except what pleases our Lord."
So he validated the raw human emotion.
Fully. But underneath that grief is the bedrock of Iwad,
Iwad.
eschatological compensation.
Okay.
The theology of Islam states that any finite suffering, even a single moment of pain for a child, is mathematically compensated with infinite eternal reward.
Infinite reward.
If you divide a finite number, say 2 years of illness, by absolute infinity,
You get 0.
you get 0. That temporal suffering is infinitely outweighed by the bliss that follows.
Wow.
The child's brief temporal pain ensures their absolute eternal safety and joy.
But the immediate pushback from a skeptic is always going to be, if God is omnipotent, why not just give them the paradise without the trauma?
Right, skip the pain.
Yeah, skip the ICU, skip the pain, and put the baby straight into the eternal joy.
And classical scholars have explored that deeply. First, the physical suffering acts as a purificatory mechanism, ensuring immediate spiritual elevation.
Okay.
But secondly, and this is crucial, the child does not exist in a vacuum.
Meaning what?
The child is part of a familial and communal web.
Oh. You're talking about the parent's crucible.
Yes. The child's illness is often the parent's ultimate test.
Right.
It is the trial that shatters their ego, strips away their reliance on the material world, deepens their desperate reliance on Allah, and entirely alters their spiritual trajectory.
So the child is being used as a tool for the parent's test. I struggle with that. That feels harsh.
It would be harsh and it would be unjust if the child ceased to exist.
Okay.
If the child was just discarded after the parents learned their lesson. But the child doesn't cease to exist.
Right, the soul continues.
The child transitions to eternal joy. And in Islamic tradition, that exact child becomes an intercessor for those very parents on the Day of Judgment.
An interesting.
They wait at the gates of paradise and refuse to enter until their parents are brought with them.
SubhanAllah. So the tragedy is a temporal illusion.
Yes.
The eternal reality is a profound, interwoven mercy that ultimately saves both the child and the family.
Exactly.
We just can't see the whole tapestry while we're stuck staring at the back of the thread.
That is beautifully stated. It requires an immense amount of trust.
It really does.
Trusting that the unseen reality is infinitely more merciful than what our limited eyes are showing us in the moment.
Which is the very definition of Iman.
That trust is the very definition of Iman.
Okay. That makes sense for human beings. We have souls, we have an afterlife, we have compensation.
Right.
But I want to shift the lens to the natural world. I have notes here on evolutionary biology and ecology.
The natural world is a whole different layer of this.
Think about Darwin.
Darwin's existential crisis.
Exactly. Darwin looked at the ichneumon wasp. Have you heard of this?
Yes, the parasitic wasp.
Right, this parasitic wasp that lays its eggs inside a living caterpillar.
It's quite brutal.
The larvae hatch and eat the caterpillar from the inside out. And they specifically save the vital organs for last so the caterpillar stays alive and fresh as long as possible.
Yeah.
It is an absolute horror show. Darwin looked at that and essentially lost his faith.
I can see why it would disturb him.
He couldn't reconcile a benevolent God with that level of calculated brutality.
Yes. He asked what the point of such terror could be, especially since animals don't have human free will or our version of moral testing.
Right. And if biology requires this brutal predation, do animals just suffer and blink into nothingness?
What do your notes say?
I have a lot of ecological data here, specifically from Yellowstone, about why predators are necessary, the concept of trophic cascades.
Walk me through the data you have on that.
It's fascinating. Trophic cascades show how apex predators regulate the entire health of an ecosystem from the top down.
Okay.
In Yellowstone National Park, for decades, humans decided that wolves were cruel and a nuisance.
So what do they do?
So by the 1920s, they eradicated the wolves entirely. They wanted to create a peaceful environment for the elk and deer.
Which sounds exactly like what the atheists and skeptics are asking for.
Exactly. A world without predators. A biological utopia.
And what was the result?
It was an unmitigated ecological disaster.
Really?
Without the wolves hunting them, the elk population absolutely exploded. They lost their fear, so they gathered in the valleys and overgrazed everything.
They ate all the vegetation?
They ate all the young willow and aspen trees right down to the roots along the riverbanks.
And because the roots were gone, the soil lost its integrity.
Yes. The riverbanks eroded. The river started widening and becoming shallow.
Wow.
But it gets worse. Because the trees were gone, the songbirds lost their habitats and left.
The whole system unraveled.
Totally. The beavers, which rely on those specific trees to build their dams, completely disappeared.
And without beaver dams.
Without beaver dams, the habitats for fish, amphibians, and reptiles vanished.
Just from removing one predator.
The entire ecosystem was collapsing into a dying, barren monoculture, all because humans removed the cruelty of the predator.
And then they brought the wolves back.
In 1995, they reintroduced just a small number of wolves.
And what happened?
The wolves started hunting the elk, and the ripple effect was staggering.
I can imagine.
The elk, out of fear, stopped grazing in the vulnerable valleys. Almost immediately, the willow and aspen trees grew back.
And the birds returned?
The forests regenerated, the songbirds returned, the beavers came back, built dams, and created habitats for ducks, fish, and otters.
That's incredible.
The roots stabilized the riverbanks, so the rivers actually changed course and deepened. The suffering of the hunted elk is the exact structural necessity that maintains the biodiversity of the entire landscape.
It proves that a painless ecosystem isn't a paradise.
No.
It's a dead zone. Predation isn't a cosmic evil, it is metabolic energy transfer.
Right.
It's how life sustains life on a finite planet. The cruelty Darwin saw in the wasp is human emotional projection onto a non-moral biological process.
But I still struggle with the individual. The overall ecosystem is saved, sure.
But the individual zebra or elk?
Yeah. The individual zebra being eaten by a lion, or the elk taken down by the wolf.
Oh.
It still feels the terror.
It does.
The pain is real to that animal. Does it just die to serve the riverbanks and then disappear into nothing?
This is where Islamic theology offers something incredibly unique, something most people are completely unaware of.
What is that?
The Quran does not view animals as mere biological automatons or background props for the human drama.
Okay.
In Surah Al-Am, the Quran states, "There is no creature on the earth or bird that flies with its wings, except that they are among nations like you."
No nations, meaning they have their own societal structures, their own consciousness?
Yes. And more importantly, the verse concludes by saying they will all be gathered to their Lord.
Wait.
Animals have an eschatological destiny.
Wait, really? Animals have an afterlife in the Islamic tradition?
Yes.
Do they actually get justice for what happens to them in the wild?
Absolutely. There is a very famous hadith in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, explicitly states that on the day of judgment, rights will be restored so perfectly that even the hornless sheep will exact justice from the horned sheep that struck it.
SubhanAllah, I had no idea the concept of divine justice extended to the animal kingdom like that.
It does. The suffering of the prey is tracked. It is recorded.
Oh.
It is compensated in the renewed creation.
Yeah.
Predation and fear are features of the dunya, the temporal physical testing ground.
Right.
They are not features of the eternal order.
Mm-hmm.
So even for the animal, the pain is a brief, finite transaction that ends in absolute justice.
That completely changes the picture.
It really does.
It's not a blind, indifferent universe where the weak are just ground into dust and forgotten.
No.
Every single ounce of pain, down to a sheep getting headbutted in a field, is recorded and rectified.
The ledger is balanced perfectly. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted.
Okay, we've covered biology, ecology, and the metaphysics of physical decay. But I want to bring up the final looming question.
The hardest one.
The thing that really drives people to despair. Human moral evil.
The atrocities we commit against one another.
Yes, the wars, the genocides. I look at the news out of Gaza or Aleppo or Sudan.
It's devastating.
We read the stories of the prophets and we see God parting the Red Sea to save Musa from Pharaoh.
Yes.
We see the fire becoming cool for Ibrahim, massive, overt, physics-defying divine intervention.
Exactly.
Where is that today?
That is the question.
If God can part a sea to save the oppressed, why doesn't he stop a barrel bomb from falling on a hospital in Aleppo?
Right.
Why the silence during the Holocaust or Rwanda? If he can stop the fire, why doesn't he stop the bullet?
It is the most visceral, heartbreaking question of our time.
It really is.
And to understand it, we have to rigorously differentiate between two concepts in Islamic theology: mujizat, which are prophetic miracles, and general global welfare.
How do those differ? Because it feels like the same thing to someone praying for a miracle.
I understand that. But the secular mind looks at the Red Sea parting and thinks, God is running a global protection agency, and he just stopped doing his job.
Right.
But that's not what a miracle is. Miracles, mujizat, were highly specific, temporary suspensions of natural law designed for one singular purpose.
What purpose?
To authenticate the claim of a prophet who was bringing revelation.
So they weren't just God stepping in to be a superhero and save the day.
No.
They were a stamp of authenticity on the message.
Exactly. They are the proof that the revelation was real.
Okay.
Once the final revelation was completed, the era of overt, physics-defying prophetic miracles ceased.
So what are we left with?
The world must now operate on Sunnatullah, the predictable, stable laws of nature. Gravity, thermodynamics.
Ballistics.
I want to use a modern analogy here to see if I'm tracking this.
For it.
It's like a software developer who builds an open-world video game. The developer writes the physics engine.
Right.
They create the gravity, the collision mechanics, the way objects interact. That's the Sunnatullah, the natural laws.
Right.
I like where this is going.
But if a player logs into the game, uses that physics engine to pick up a boulder, and drops it on another player's house,
You don't blame the physics engine.
you don't blame the developer for making gravity work. The developer provided the arena and the gravity as necessary for the game to function,
Yes.
but the player authored the crime.
That is an incredibly accurate analogy, and it aligns perfectly with Ash'ari theology.
How so?
The Ash'aris distinguish between God willing the movements cosmically and what he commands legislatively.
Okay.
God creates the causal frame, the physics of the bomb, the gravity that makes it fall.
Right.
He permits it to happen by maintaining the stable laws of physics, because a stable universe is absolutely required for free will to exist.
But he strictly forbids the murder legislatively.
Exactly. The moral responsibility belongs 100% to the human who dropped the bomb.
But if you're listening to this and your heart is breaking for the victims, you might still ask.
Why not just tweak the physics engine?
Yeah. Jam the gun. Make the bomb a dud.
Think through the logical consequences of that.
Okay.
If God constantly intervened to stop every bullet, to jam every gun, to cure every cancer before it formed, what happens to human free will?
It disappears.
What happens to Ikhyar, our capacity to choose, and Takliv, our moral responsibility?
If every time I try to do something bad, an invisible hand stops me, then I'm not really choosing anything.
Right.
I'm just a toddler in a padded room.
Exactly. If God intervenes in every instance of evil, human agency is completely nullified.
The world would cease to be a proving ground.
It would just be a puppet show. There would be no real stakes, no real choices, and ultimately no real human dignity.
Wow.
The silence of God during a crisis is actually the space he provides for human moral agency to mean something.
I want to push back on that because the cost of that free will is the blood of the innocent. That feels too expensive.
It would be too expensive if the story ended in the mass grave.
But it doesn't.
No. As we discussed, the victim's temporal suffering is being converted into infinite eternal compensation.
Right, the Iwad.
And the oppressor is sealing their own eternal doom. And crucially, the atrocity is a test for the bystanders.
For us.
For us.
Yeah.
When we watch the news and ask, why doesn't God stop the starvation? God is asking us, why don't you?
Wow.
I gave you the resources, the political mechanisms, the empathy, and the explicit command to stop it.
That's powerful.
We want God to suspend physics so we don't have to exercise our own moral agency and make sacrifices.
We want a world where we don't have to take responsibility. We want the luxury hotel.
We want the concierge to clean up the mess.
And we are in the crucible.
We're in the crucible.
I feel like we've just traveled through the entire architecture of existence.
We covered a lot of ground today.
From the gym weights to the neural pathways of pain, from the entropy of the stars to the Yellowstone wolves, all the way to the streets of Aleppo.
It's all connected.
If you've been sitting here with us on these steps listening to this, your perspective on reality should be fundamentally shifting right now.
How would you synthesize the whole picture?
The atheists trap the problem of evil. It only works if you agree to their rules.
Yes.
It only breaks your faith if you secretly believe the universe is meant to be a frictionless resort designed for your immediate physical comfort.
And the moment you drop that assumption, the trap dissolves entirely.
Completely. When you realize we are in Dar el Ibtila, a spiritual training ground, suddenly the heavy weights make sense.
They're there to build you.
Pain isn't cruelty. It's vital biological data keeping us alive. Evil isn't a dark substance God created. It's just the shadow cast by finite existence.
Beautifully said.
And every single ounce of unjust suffering, whether it's an infant in a hospital or a hornless sheep in a field, is mathematically perfectly compensated in eternity.
The friction produces the light.
It makes you look at your own life entirely differently. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought. Think about your own life. Think about the deepest pain, the hardest struggle, or the worst heartbreak you've ever endured, the thing you begged and prayed wouldn't happen. Now ask yourself, who would you be today if you had never gone through it? If God had intervened to keep you perfectly comfortable, what profound parts of your character, your empathy, your resilience, or your soul would simply not exist? Now ask yourself, may Allah grant us success. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.